investigate the life of Martha Caligarl.
Would you like me to talk to you about her? She was a remarkable woman.
To tell the truth, my mission has changed. For reasons that would be a little long to explain, I now have to investigate vampires.
Vampires? Don't tell me. The Catholic Church has started to believe in vampires.
On the contrary, my superiors want to combat this belief. They're alarmed to see how resistant it still is in the 20th century.
Ah, yeah, very good. If it's to fight superstition, you can count on my assistance.
It will be invaluable to me, for I need the viewpoint of a scientist on the vampire myth.
Do you realize this is the very subject of the research I was carrying out with Dr. Caligarl? We discovered a disease, the P syndrome, whose symptoms are quite similar to those attributed to the victims of vampires. So the legend is based on specific medical facts.
By the way, guys, this story that both Irina tells about the graves and whatnot, and what this guy is gonna tell you about beliefs in vampires are true stories that actually happened. So let's continue.
Dr. Caligarl contacted me while she was caring for a patient called Marescu. His granulocytes showed a very curious anomaly. She sent me a blood sample by carrier pigeon, and we worked on this case together. The result of our collaboration was the discovery of P syndrome. Afterwards, we had to specify the cause of the disease and perfect a serum. For that, I needed statistical data. I asked Dr. Caligarl to take a large number of samples from the population of Vladiviste. Unfortunately, the war interrupted our research.
Did you pick up again with Martha Caligarl after the end of the hostilities?
It wasn't possible for me to contact her immediately. When I was finally able to phone the dispensary, she was dead. It was Dr. Florescu who answered me. I just say that they're not supernatural creatures, but there certainly do exist mentally ill people who are bloodthirsty. Look at Countess Elizabeth Báthory, who in the 16th century bled to death hundreds of young girls before she was walled up alive in her Carpathian castle. In addition, as I mentioned, patients afflicted with the P syndrome suffer from very odd physical and psychological disorders that make them resemble the victims of vampires. Oh, what did these patients do?
They went out alone in the night, as if they were answering a call. They ripped off the garlic necklaces the doctor had placed on them.
Somnambulism, allergy to garlic. Those signs are most likely associated with P syndrome, as are pallor, drawn features, anemia, and other symptoms we haven't yet discovered. Unfortunately, yes. What an abominable novel.
You're too severe. That's not what Oscar Wilde thought.
I won't tell you what I think of Oscar Wilde, and I'll limit myself to the novel. It's a tissue of inconsistencies. Let's see. Stoker affirms that those who die as victims of a vampire should become one in turn. So at that rate, vampirism should spread like an epidemic, with a growth rate faster than Fibonacci's famous immortal sequence. In a first stage, all of mankind would be vampirized, and then, in a second, the vampires would also disappear, not having any victims left to feed on. So Stoker's hypothesis is therefore perfectly absurd. No species can live without regulation.
He has a point there, guys. Yeah, they will be starving after a while. Only vampires. Let's continue.
Stoker considers himself a historian and a scientist, but he's just an oddball. His novel is a collection of implausibilities. Take the character of Lucy. That woman, he keeps saying, is getting better, until she just dies. A victim of Dracula, she's treated by transfusion. Blindly, of course, because at the time, we knew nothing of blood types. In those conditions, what are the chances the patient will accept the donor's blood?
About 1 out of 3, if my recollections are good. Nonetheless, in desperate cases, it's worth the trouble to try.
Certainly, but the good Professor Van Helsing, who is always described as a genius, repeated the operation with 4 different donors. The chances of survival for that poor Lucy then fell to less than 2%. It's probably the transfusions that killed her, and not Dracula. Let's get back to Van Helsing, supposedly an expert on vampires. He teaches us that they can read minds and change into bats. However, he's not worried about finding one of the latter at the window of the room in which he's holding a meeting. And then he seems so surprised that Dracula knows his plans. The naivety of that character is irritating.
He's a funny guy. He's so irritating and annoyed by the book that he's getting mad while telling it. So let's continue.
Yeah, I noticed they coincided with epidemics of the plague. Masses of people died, they were buried quickly, and sometimes when they were still alive, they tore at themselves while trying to escape their coffins. If they were disinterred, their bodies were found bloodied. In short, they made perfect vampires.
True story.
Cases of premature burial like that aren't uncommon, you know. Even today, a colleague told me of a pregnant woman who gave birth in her coffin. The poor lady died of suffocation with her child.
That is horrible, guys. That is really horrible. Let's continue. This is true stories, by the way.
Decomposition is not a very systematic phenomenon. If the laws of nature permit 1 out of 100 bodies to deteriorate more slowly than others, take the time to open every grave in the cemetery, and you'll always find one pseudo-vampire. Anyway, why associate the absence of decomposition with vampirism? The phenomenon has been observed with many holy figures. For example, Francis Xavier and Teresa of Avila, to cite just 2. Explore the archives of your congregation, and you'll find dozens of cases. Decomposition produces gases that can give the cadaver a swollen aspect. The liquid that oozes from corpses is an odd phenomenon, but did you know that the venerable Lebanese monk Charbel Maklouf has sweat liters of blood since his death? Does that mean this holy man is a vampire?
Wow. That is all, by the way. Sweat liters of blood since the death? Still does do it, or what? Still do it, I mean. Okay. Let's continue.
What a pompous name. What does it refer to?
An initiatory journey having to do with vampirism. Professor Irina Boxoff takes it very seriously.
Himmel, esotericism, secret societies, initiatory journeys. What an old-fashioned hodgepodge. But even the greatest minds sometimes go astray. Prophecies. What exactly did the professor say?
Great evil will come forth in Germany in some 15 years. There will be massacres and a new world war.
And what is the source of these prophecies?
The hidden apocalypse of Thomas the Greater.
Ah, yeah, the Kabbalistic version.
Do you know it?
Of course. I also amused myself when I was a student with associations of letters. By the virtue of the law of numbers, once in a while, you obviously have to find a combination that makes sense.
Yeah, that could make sense, to be honest. So, now we know a bit about both sides. Irina that believes in and this guy who doesn't believe in it.
Tell me, could I ask you a personal question? Listening to your voice, I have the feelings that you're a little tense.
Yes, I'm not sleeping well.
Nothing else? You can confide in me. I'm a doctor, you know.
Well, sometimes I get the feeling I'm being spied upon. I'm sure it's only an impression, but it's becoming an obsession.
Father Arno, you are sensitive and susceptible, like our late lamented Dr. Caligaro. These are qualities, but they make you vulnerable. Above all, don't let your imagination govern you.
That's good advice. Thank you. I'll try to follow it. All right. The time has come to call Monsignor Briganti to tell him my investigation is nearing its end. I hope he's in his office.
So let's call our superior, guys, and see what he has to say.
So, your stay in Budapest.
Instructive. But I must admit that Professor Boxoff's opinions are rather disturbing.
Oh, that's alarming. I do hope that you intend to conclude the way we expect.
Rest assured. I also spoke with Professor Kruger, who approached the problem in a very rational manner. I now have sufficient material to write my report. I'm starting tonight.
Oh, you're always so dynamic. But try to get some rest afterwards. If you like Vladoviste, stay there a while. Walk, read, pray, enjoy the calm and the silence. I'm going for a 2-week retreat to a little monastery in Abruzzo. We'll see each other when I get back to Rome.
Goodbye, Your Eminence.
Be well, Arno.
I worked late, I finished my report, and then I went to bed. It was hot and humid.
Arno. Arno.
Another night of agitation. That's the 3rd time I've dreamt of Maria. I'm attracted to that woman, it's obvious. Lord, preserve me from temptation.
And I'm back, guys. So, Vlad Tepes was a prisoner in Turkey, and he managed to escape. So this is... okay. This is what Irina sent us, I guess.
Whoa!
Here's
This
the
medallion.
medallion.
I saw it in a dream.
So that means she actually was here, guys. Not only in a dream. That's scary. So let's head down and see what's happening. We heard a shot, didn't we? Didn't we?
Father, I gotta talk to you.
What is it, Ozana?
Well, Mr. Luca asked me to wake him up early. He wanted to leave for Turkey. For Turkey! Imagine that. So